Hello, my name is Chandrakala Gurung and today's date is 8th of March 2025 and the time is 9:10 p.m. Today I'm going to do a role play on case study 2, which is adapt communication strategies scenario 2. So it is a scenario about a resident whose name is Mr. Johnson, and I'm facing a problem here with his hearing. So I'm having a difficulty in communicating with an elderly person, Mr. Johnson, because because due to his age, his hearing uh, hearing is declining. So in this role play, I will tell you the different strategies I would apply to communicate with Mr. Johnson so he gets a proper high quality care. So I'm role playing uh, support worker Samantha, who is a staff member in an organization who looks after the elderly people who serve a diverse group of elderly individuals with varying needs. So, this is an organization who provides a compassionate and personalized care to for the well-being of the residents. So one day, what happened when I went to the organization to look after the elderly, and I was trying to communicate Mr. Johnson. He was having difficulty explaining himself. So Mr. Johnson, he is having difficulty in hearing, and recently his dietary has been changed. So his due to his like age and swallowing difficulties and all, his dietary is changed to another texture. So I noticed that Mr. Johnson was having difficulty explaining to explaining his food preferences and dietary needs to Mary. Mary, who is also a caregiver of the facility, and she is responsible for coordinating dietary preferences and ensuring the residents needs are met. But due to Mr. Johnson's hearing impairment, he was not able to explain Mary what his dietary needs are, because the questions Mary is asking to him, he was not able to answer them, and it was a barrier between their communication, and the communication is ineffective. So I was witnessing both communication, and to overcome this problem and help Mr. Johnson, I would apply some strategies which would be beneficial and effective for him. So first of all is if Mr. Johnson is having hearing impairment problems, he need to see a doctor specialist, and if as per doctor advice if he needs a hearing aids, that would be a best solution for him. Apart from that, like considering his hearing impairment, the communication which I can make it more effective for Mr. Johnson are like face to face communication with him. So even if he do not hear us properly, he can lip read our questions, and he will like get to know what we are trying to ask him, so he can correctly answer his questions, and he can ask his doubts. Another thing is by writing notes on a notepad on showing him, so he can understand that what we want to speak to him. And another thing is hand gestures and facial expressions, so Mr. Johnson understands that like what we are trying to ask him. Like if we want to ask him about his food, so we can like showing your hand gestures like what would you like to have, and what is your likes and dislikes, etc. Another thing, to cater Mr. Johnson's preference in communicating about his dietary changes, I, as a caregiver, Samantha, would communicate clearly at a moderate pace, repeated sentences, and use simple and familiar language to him. I would avoid complex English words and a fast language for him, because being an elderly person, he already having difficulty in hearing, and if I use complex sentences, he would get like confused, so I avoid that. Similarly, I would avoid background noises, and if possible, I would take him to the quiet place to have a chat, a communication about his like needs and his or if he needs something, his dietary needs or his preferences, his choices. So I would ask all his preferences in a quiet and private area. As well as I would also take the help of notepad to ask him questions, so he can tell me properly about his likes and dislikes of food, and he can also answer me by writing back. Another thing, the specific considerations I would adapt while communicating with Mr. Johnson, and the factors which is affecting his hearing condition, which I would be mindful of, are of his age, his health, and his medical conditions, because the people by aging, they already have some kind of medical diagnosis and comorbidities which affect their hearing, so I would consider that too. Another thing, that his comfort zone, if he doesn't like to talk in public, I will take him to private area. Another thing, like I will ask him his preferences, even if his dietary needs are changed. So if for example he like to have toast on breakfast, but he cannot have toast, so what would he like to have instead of toast? So I would offer him choices, as well as I will also explain everything by showing the pictures in the books, so he would better understand that like what I'm trying to ask him or explain him. So these strategies I would consider while like communicating with Mr. Johnson. Another thing is to better facilitate communication between Mr. Johnson and Mary in the situation, the strategies I would apply is the resources that would develop facilitate communication is shared book, which includes a meal plan and dietary requirement for Mr. Johnson, colored coded meal trays that Mr. Johnson can use to identify the dietary options he has, visual chart and meal options where possible for Mr. Johnson's, and he could also explain and ask if he like to have something different uh, than the menu on the day. So all these strategies we can apply to have a better communication between Mr. Johnson and Mary, who is who look after the food dietary of residents. So the two communication resources which I would follow, so there can be effective communication between the staff and the resident, is menu with pictures on food items. Another is a notepad where the care staff can give it to residents and they can write their answers. And on top of that, there is like many more things, such as um, in an organization there are like numerous individuals work there, and the residents who live there have different health problems. So it is very important for them to effectively communicate with residents and fulfill their needs. And as I told you before, Mr. Johnson would also need assistive technologies like hearing aids and speech to text apps for his assistance. Thank you. That's all for this role play.